Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 43 of Supersports, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of exotic cars that are not quite on the level of supercars, but at the same time are definitely beyond your average sports car. And some of these cars are more obscure, as you'd expect. And some of them are actually quite surprising that they're on the game at all, because there seem to be far more obvious choices to go for. But at the same time, it's cool that these cars get the chance. And this car in particular is actually featured a lot more than you'd probably expect. A car as obscure as it is, to most people at least, to be featured in multiple racing games, and not just Gran Turismo. This car, which is of course the Oullim Spirra, formerly known as the Proto Motors Spirra, has actually been featured on Forza as well. And on both games, it's a deceptively good car, and a car which is, more so on Gran Turismo, kind of misunderstood. Not in terms of culture or design or anything like that, but this is one of those cars, like, to some degree, the Gallardo and the Salina 7, is considered to be a car with bad handling, challenging handling, difficult to drive, etc. It has a number of titles that essentially mean the same thing. People don't know how to set this car up to make it take corners without being twitchy, without oversteering, without spinning out constantly, without losing grip, etc. It can be done. I've done it myself. And when you do it right, this car can actually shock you with how good it is and how competitive it is. Because consider this, the Spirra is a Korean car, a supersports car, and in real life it's available in multiple forms, ranging all the way up to a 600 horsepower, 200 mile per hour version. There's even an electric concept version, and over the years it's had quite a few different restyles, although personally I consider this to be one of the better looking models. In terms of the ethos of the design, the way they put the package together, not just visually but mechanically, it does something which I've mentioned on the channel before I'm a huge fan of. I love it when manufacturers take the best aspects of different countries and put them together. Some of the best cars ever made have featured that kind of ethos. The Zonda, the McLaren F1, various others that are considered to be among the best cars you can buy have done that. They combine the best of different countries together to make a superior vehicle, a cultural hybrid, if you will. This car does that as well. Now, it's not as well known or necessarily as amazing as a Zonda or a McLaren F1, but it's impressive nonetheless. Because this car is Korean, as we said, it looks though slightly like an Italian car. It has a kind of Lamborghini-esque vibe to it, sort of like a Gallardo, but at the same time not, because if you put them next to each other, they actually look nothing alike. You just think they do. And combine that with American power, specifically a 4.6 litre V8 from the Mustang, which you can supercharge. Now, unfortunately, this car is not quite as powerful as the Mustangs can be on Gran Turismo, and that's a shame, because it should be. There's no reason why this car shouldn't have the same kind of power. It doesn't have as much though, and that is a shame, because given how fast it is with this amount of power, it could be an absolute monster if it matched the roughly 800 horsepower that the other Mustangs do, such as the Mustang GT and the SVT Cobra version. Now, as far as power, it's not bad. It still puts out 630 of them, and that's decent enough for a supersports model, not as much as some, but still gets your foot in the door, certainly. And being an American V8, torque is in good supply, 584 foot-pounds. Now that on its own would be pretty good, especially from a country which is not generally known for exotic vehicles. But combine that power and torque into a package that's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, and, more importantly, only weighs 1,014 kilos, and you've got yourself a potential exotic sleeper car. Something which is far faster and far more competitive than people would ever give it credit for. That is definitely the case with this car. Now, in terms of pure on-paper spec and performance, it's not necessarily the most amazing car. It can come off initially as being okay, nothing amazing. The power is okay, the torque is good, but again, it's not going to set any records. The weight is good, but not as light as, say, a TVR Tuscan. So why am I saying that this is a particularly notable car? Well, consider a few things about it. It has 630 horsepower, which is one of the lower powers of this entire series, but it has a top speed of around or even over, depending on gearing, 250 miles per hour under its own power. Now on Gran Turismo, 250 is not considered to be really great, because cars can do 300 or more. But for that power, there's very little that can match that. If you reduce a Huayra or various other vehicles down to that kind of power level, they may still be quicker, but not by much. And that reflects pretty well on this car, because that means it is quick for its power. The acceleration is also excellent because of how light it is, and the fact that it's mid-engine, which means that under acceleration your weight shifts to the back end more so than it would with a front-wheel drive car. Add on top of that the fact that this car only costs 80,000 credits. Now, typical vehicles that are considered for amazing value for money on the game tend to be the GTR, the Supra, the Tomicara ZZ2, that kind of thing. This car, although more expensive than some of those, is actually, I would say, just as good a value deal. Just because it's challenging to set up correctly does not make it a bad car. In fact, if anything, it makes it more of a performance gem, because it means that those who do put the effort in can have an amazing advantage. And this is one of those cars which is worth putting effort into. Some cars are hard to drive, but even if you tune them, they're not that great. They might end up being as good as everything else, but then that kind of makes you think, what was the point of tuning it? This car isn't as good. It's better than many of them. The cornering is certainly challenging, and even with tuning, elements of that are still there, but definitely check this car out. But that's it overall for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.